Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the episode 10 of the Hustle Do a Show, where we'll explore further the topic of intermittent fasting. But before I tell you more about it, I just want to say a big thank you for sticking around. This is the first kind of a little milestone for us, episode 10. So I really enjoy doing these interviews. I can't wait to have more exciting guests on the show. And actually, we have some more exciting news for you. In a couple of weeks, we'll introduce an extra show per week. So on Mondays and Thursdays, there's going to be 2 shows per week, and the extra show will actually be much shorter, no more than 10-15 minutes, and will be based only about top tricks and techniques for body and mind growth. So anything that helps your body to be stronger, your mind to be stronger, and you a better person. So definitely excited about this new show episode coming out. So in this episode, I chat with Megan G. Ramos, who is a clinical researcher and a kidney specialist. And actually, we talk about some of the specific questions about intermittent fasting, because if you're a beginner, if you want to know more about what is intermittent fasting and how it works, go and listen to the episode 7 and 9, where I chat with Dr. Mike and Dr. Brady, where we cover all the fundamentals, all the basics on intermittent fasting. But today, I asked Megan a couple of really specific questions. For example, how does fasting affect female hormones? How to use fasting and keto diet to fight diabetes? Are there any age restrictions for intermittent fasting? Can your parents do it? Can your grandparents do that? So pretty specific questions, but definitely very valuable information. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's say hi to Megan. Hi Megan, and welcome to the Hustle Do a Show.
Hey Taurus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Thanks a lot. So finally, we had a chance to talk with you. We had to do a couple of reschedules, but the stars are aligned now, and we and I hope we're gonna have an awesome chat. And the timing could not be better, because on Monday we start the intermittent fasting challenge with our community.
Oh,
And
awesome! That's fantastic.
exactly. So for 21 days, people will be able to experience what is intermittent fasting, and try it out for themselves and see if it sticks to their lifestyle or not, what are the benefits and so on. So definitely excited for us as well, because we're going to do it together with my wife and also for the community, and just looking forward to get the knowledge from you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Definitely a pleasure. So the first question is the question I ask everybody, and is what's your biggest superpower, Megan?
I knew this was coming, and I think I can eat more bacon than anyone on the planet. You take a man like Shaquille O'Neal size, and I can probably out eat bacon. And I'm about 5 feet tall, and I'm a very tiny little lady. But I could out eat Shaquille O'Neal, the NBA basketball player in
Yeah,
bacon.
of course,
I think
of
he's like
course.
9 feet tall or something like that.
I mean, he's massive. He's huge. I'm a big basketball fan, so I'm definitely aware how big Shaquille O'Neal is. So it's
I've met him once.
yeah,
He's huge. I go up to like his belly button, but
yeah. But you still, I think this should be a definitely actual challenge. We should film it.
I could do it. So I can fast, but I sure know how to feast too.
Yeah, that goes hand in hand. So besides loving bacon and being able to eat enormous amount of it, what else? What's your background? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm a clinical researcher. A lot of my research focused on nephrology patients, so kidney patients, and monitoring the progression of their kidney disease. So I started working at a nephrology clinic when I was just about 15 years old. I'm going to be 34 this year. I thought kidneys are pretty cool, obviously, because I've stuck around. And that's where I met my colleague, Dr. Jason Fung. Jason Fung's actually a kidney specialist. Most people think he's a diabetes specialist. I guess he has become a diabetes specialist, but that's his background, is nephrology. So Jason and I would do all these research studies together from when at the time I was a kid to when I was in school, and that my research studies then became my school projects. And we would just monitor the progression of everyone's kidney disease. Most of the time, though, their kidney disease is caused by diabetes. And as the diabetes became worse, the kidney disease became worse. And there is nothing from a kidney standpoint that a kidney doctor like Dr. Fung or someone involved in kidney disease like myself could do to help these people. So it just became really disheartening. So my background is in clinical research with a focus on diabetic kidney disease in particular. So that's what I've done most of my life until Jason and I decided to start the intensive dietary management program. We both got really frustrated with watching our patients die from diabetes and not be able to help them. And then I became diabetic, and I was determined that I wasn't going to follow the regular path and be a statistic, and that I was going to be an outlier. And that's when we started doing a lot of research into this. That's when I started trying therapeutic fasting. Everyone thought we were insane, patients, colleagues, family members. But I had tremendous success, and it was very obvious. So they finally said, they being our colleagues, said that they would throw their support behind us to try this with patients. We had a lot of success with our initial patient cohort in the IDM program. So I transitioned out of nephrology and doing research in kidney disease to start doing research in insulin resistance, therapeutic fasting, and then in the last few years, low carb and ketogenic diets as well.
Gotcha. So what was the change in your approach that really kind of switched and brought really a big success to you guys?
With us, for me, all we did was watch people die, and being able to offer them something that actually made them better and gave them control back over their health. For me, that was all that it took to make me switch careers and to make Jason refocus his entire career from just strictly kidney disease patients to adding on this whole metabolic diabetes component instead. Because all we were doing is just watching people die and trying to keep them as comfortable as possible. But being able to actually offer these people something that could make them better and that was making them better, I mean, that's awesome. I go to work every week and people come off of medications they've been on for 30 years. They were told they were never going to be able to come off of. We give them back control of their health, and we make our information, our help, we actually make them healthier. And that's what it's supposed to be. And so it's really easy just to make the jump in career focus for both him and I into doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great. I think you're doing a great job, and I mean, helping people, saving lives, taking people off medication rather than prescribing them more medication is. I think that's just awesome. So you mentioned that in the last couple of years you started digging deeper into ketogenic diet and so on. And I've noticed also myself that the intermittent fasting and ketosis and ketogenic diet really kind of picked up the speed in the last couple of years. It's a big trend. Everybody talks about it. We talk about it. It's our third podcast on this topic. So, but my question is, why do you think this became so popular only in the last couple of years? Is this something we know now that we didn't know before, or is just a coincidence?
Well, I think people are realizing that what we've been told to do just doesn't work anymore. And people are going back to their roots and thinking, well, how did our ancestors eat? Well, they ate ketogenically. This is how we evolved as a species. It was a diet that was tried, tested, and true for hundreds and thousands of years. And it was just this new, weird, modernized, processed food diet over the last, 100 years or so that's when we're getting all this prevalence of diabetes and heart disease and obesity and all these other chronic conditions that we never had before as a species. Um, so I think people are just sort of realizing. We have a lot of people our age, and we watched our grandparents suffer from metabolic syndrome and our parents. We realize that what physicians or doctors are offering our grandparents and our parents just doesn't work. We watched it fail with our grandparents. We're watching it fail with our parents. So being diagnosed with diabetes I was 27, when I was diagnosed, I knew it wasn't going to work for me. So my thought process when I was talking to Jason, I was like, well, what did people do in the 1700s? There was no diabetes. Type 2 diabetes isn't a thing. Obesity wasn't much of a thing then either. How did we eat? When did we eat? And I think people in our age group, especially in the younger generations even, are just realizing that this stuff just doesn't work. And I think that's a big reason why we're seeing such an increase in interest in low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets, so where there's really none of this processed garbage, because we know now that that gives us disease. It's been when um, my grandmother, when she was alive, these processed foods, these medications, they were all new to her. She didn't know that they would make her condition worse. She didn't know that these foods would give her disease because they were new foods. They're not new foods to us anymore. They've been around and we've seen the outcome. So we just want to go back. And that's why I think that it's becoming so trendy. We know that fast food, we know that, these carbohydrates are going to give us disease. So what's not? And this is ketogenic foods, low carbohydrate diets. That's how we evolved. That's how, that's what's worked for thousands of years. So why not go back to it? So don't think it's like it's retrending. That's for sure. But it's nothing new that the human species hasn't practiced for many, many years before.
Yeah, so it just seems that we finally slowly getting enough of that processed food and all that sugar and and all the sodas and everywhere. Like it just used to be probably, we were just victims of advertising, those Coke ads with the Santa Claus coming with his wagon. It's just so nice. I mean, of course I want a bottle of Coke, but
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like the information finally is spreading, from maybe a small community towards a wider audience. And that's awesome. If people can get healthier overall, that's just better for humanity, better for everybody. Um, One question, I have many questions, but one question comes from my wife, and particularly about intermittent fasting and maybe fasting in general for women. So, particularly, does it affect, and if it does, how does it affect fertility, female hormones, and so on? Do you have some information here, yourself being a female?
So with women, we really don't notice that much of a different experience than men, despite we're a lot more hormonally complex. But there are a few things that do happen with women. Women tend to struggle during certain parts of their cycle the most when it comes to fasting. So fasting tends to be the easiest right before their menstrual cycle starts, tends to be the most difficult during the menstrual cycle. Then the next 7 days tend to be easier. So we go 1 week it's easy, 1 week it's challenging, 1 week it's easy, 1 week it's challenging. But usually more women who follow sort of the standard, first world, developed world, processed food diet, they tend to be a little bit more hormonally out of whack. So sometimes with women who just appear to really struggle with hunger during certain parts of the cycle, we focus just on ketogenic diets with them. And the other 2 weeks of their cycle that they'll fast. So we have them fasting, eating, intermittently until their hormones seem to stabilize. And we usually find within about 3 months, women who used to feel really ravenous during the week of their menstrual period don't feel that way anymore. Because even though the hormones do fluctuate, they're not as great once the body cuts out the garbage food and is eating food that doesn't cause a whole lot of insulin shifts that then result in other hormonal shifts, like with our estrogen and progesterone and other hormonal levels. So that's what we'll do for some women. Some women, though, who start off fasting right away and they just tough it out, they tough out those difficult weeks in their cycle, we do find that their period ends up being a little erratic for about 3 or 4 months. And this is because their hormones are so out of whack. The biggest problem is insulin. And when insulin gets thrown off with our diet, it throws off all of our other hormones in our body. And so it has a dramatic impact on our female hormones. So when our cycles just get messed up. So a lot of younger women I work with, they say, "Oh my gosh, could we be pregnant?" Or or they worry because they're not having a menstrual cycle that maybe they're losing their period and their fertility organs, everything's shutting down. But that's not the case. It's just their body re-regulating. And we find after 3 or 4 months, women start to have regular periods. Even for women who didn't really have them regularly, they go from irregular to super irregular to absolutely perfectly normal. And once you start having this normal menstrual periods and your cycle's normal and your hormones are stable throughout, we actually see an improvement in fertility. I was told that I was virtually infertile, and that was in my early 20s. And now I'm in my almost mid 30s. It's scary. But they say now I'm as fertile as a teenager because you regulate all of your hormones throughout fasting and throughout doing diets like a low carbohydrate diet or a ketogenic diet. So we actually have over 2 dozen IDM babies who were accidentally born in the clinic. Most of these women came and sought out treatment for PCOS. Most of them thought that they could never have kids, even though they wanted kids, but they needed to sort out their PCOS to lose weight and prevent diabetes. But they started having regular periods. Their the improvements in lower fertility hormone levels went up. Hormones that were high that reduced fertility came down. Everything leveled out. And within about the first 6 months of doing this is the time frame where most of these women got pregnant. It was towards the 6 month mark. And everyone was happy because a lot of these women have been told for a long time that they would never get to have babies. So we've only seen positive results in terms of it. So it's been cool. Very cool.
It's definitely cool. It's definitely cool. Wow, awesome, awesome to hear that. I think my wife will be very happy. She's definitely been, worried about this whole topic, and it's amazing. I knew a lot of benefits of intermittent fasting and fasting and keto diet, but that's definitely a new territory for me. And I hope a lot of female listeners that's listening to this episode right now, they could learn something. So actually, once again, what is recommended for women? So would just go like 2 weeks of. Did you mention 2 weeks of fasting and 2 weeks of like kind of ketogenic diet, and then just alternating?
Oh, at the start, to do like 1 week keto, 1 week fasting. So on day one of your cycle, for those first 7 days, you would do keto, and then from day 7 through like day 13, you would do fasting. Day 14, through day 20, 21, you would do keto feasting and then fasting. So alternating weeks tends to work better with our hormonal cycles, makes it easier to fast. And then on the weeks where your appetite is up because of your hormonal cycles, then you can just focus on eating good ketogenic foods, and you don't have to put the stress on yourself of trying to fast when you have all this estrogen that's telling you to eat.
Gotcha. All right, makes sense. So all the ladies, 3-4 months of a little bit off balance, but then everything will get back on tracks, and you'll be more balanced, happier, and basically just healthier. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Another question, I also, because I'm chatting with my parents, I'm gonna do this intermittent fasting and so on and so on, and then suddenly a question pops up like, does fasting has age restrictions? Can my parents do it? Is it recommended or not, and so on?
Our first trial population of patients in our clinic was over the age of 70 years old. Um, so that was really cool. So you don't have to. There are really none. I mean, if someone came into our clinic and wasn't in good shape, and their life expectancy wasn't great, at that point, fasting probably is not going to improve the quality of life that much. But man, I've seen some spunky 90-year-olds in our office, and I don't see why they couldn't fast either. As long as overall, you're not contending with any major medical ailments, like you're not on dialysis and you're 92. Might not be an ideal person to fast. But actually, our first patient cohort was over 70, and the average age of our first 80 patients that we worked with was 71. That I know for certain. So most of the patients in our clinic in Toronto are over the age of 50. in the clinic, a lot of them 60 and 70 years of age. So we do help a lot of people who are young and very healthy stay that way. You can fast if you're young and healthy and you want to stay healthy. That's perfectly fine. There's lots of other benefits to fasting and disease prevention. But there doesn't appear to be an age restriction. As long as you're in pretty decent shape, you don't have any fluid restrictions, you're pretty good to fast. Heck, we have one really spunky 103-year-old in the clinic. He's not an IDM patient. He's a nephrology patient. But he's actually in good shape. He's not diabetic. He says, I ate the way we did in Japan, growing up. He's like, I don't need any of your Canadian food. So that's why he's probably not diabetic, but he's in fine shape. So I don't think there needs to be an age restriction at all.
All right, that clears it up for sure. That makes it easier to talk to my parents and maybe propose this to them as well. So, but what type of fasting do you usually recommend to them? Is it intermittent fasting, 6 and 8 method, or is it alternate day, or is 24 hours fast? Is there, any type you prefer?
So usually most of our patients are pretty sick. So we usually try to get them to doing 36 or 42 hours of intermittent fast, whether they're 87 or they're 47 or 37. We treat them all the same. Sometimes even some patients who are quite older, will have them fast for prolonged periods of time, like 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days, even at an older age. They're just as perfectly capable of doing it as we are. Of course, there's lots of factors that go into determining the right fasting regimen. But I will say our gold standard for the first 6 to 12 months that we work with a patient is to either start them at 36 or 42 hours of intermittent fasting on a consistent basis, or work them up to being able to do 36 or 42 hours of fasting. Sometimes people want to be really cautious about it, so we'll start them off with 13 hours or 16 hours of fasting, maybe 24. But once they're feeling more confident about their capability when it comes to fasting, then we'll try to really push them towards 36 and 42 if it's suitable.
Of course. So then does that mean that after 36 or 42 hours, they go to the eating window for the same amount of hours, and then they switch again? Or?
Roughly. So with a 36-hour fast, yeah. So a 36-hour fast would be Sunday, you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Monday, you fast. Tuesday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Wednesday, you fast. So it's pretty equal. The 42 hours is just eliminating breakfast. So you spend a little bit more time fasting than feasting. So you would have lunch and dinner on Sunday, fast on Monday, lunch and dinner on Tuesday, fast on Wednesday. So you do spend more time in a fasted state than a feasted state. The feasted state is really it's 2 90-minute eating windows and an 8-hour period. So even on the eating day at a 42-hour fast, they're still doing a 16 or 18-hour fast that day.
Mm-hmm. All right. Makes sense. Just for everybody who's thinking to join the challenge, the method that we do is 16-8. This is the most common, let's say, and let's see how that goes.
That's great for healthy people. I mean, if everyone just did that, if you're healthy, you're going to stay healthy for a very long time. And so it's a great place if you're healthy, or if you're thinking about fasting therapeutically, that's a great place to get started.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So we also get a lot of people who are, let's say, they focus on the benefit of the fat loss or, fat burning of intermittent fasting, getting to the ketosis and so on. And what they say is like, I don't want to lose more fat. I'm already happy with my ratio, I'm pretty lean. And then they say, no, fasting is not for me. Is that true? Or if they control the eating window properly, they would not lose fat, but they could still get the other benefits. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. They have to control the eating properly. I think someone who's very lean in terms of body fat percentage, definitely doing something frequently like a 5-day fast or a 42-hour fast regularly is not a good idea. But I do think if you are someone who is quite lean, sticking to good eating windows, eating a really good high-fat diet, periodically trying to do a longer fast or do it like even a 24-hour fast once a week can just help prevent a lot of disease. We have a lot of patients we work with that are extremely low body fat cancer patients because they've been through all of the lows that you go through when you're going through chemotherapy and radiation and multiple surgeries. They really don't want to lose weight. So we just really enhance the fat in their diet. Like they'll be taking 300 to 500 grams of fat a day on their eating days. And then that way, when they fast, they don't lose weight. We had one gentleman who was a cancer patient, and our team, like they were oncologists as naturopaths, us, the fasting people, we all sort of agreed on 5 days. So he would do 2 consecutive 5-day fasts. So he'd do, not consecutive, he'd do Monday to Friday, eat on the weekend, then do another Monday to Friday, eat on the weekend, and then he'd have 2 weeks of chemotherapy, and then we would repeat it again. Well, this guy, over the course of everything, so he had 4 rounds of chemo. So we had 4 rounds of doing 2 5-day fasts back to back. He gained 6 pounds. So we just made sure that on his eating days when he was going through chemotherapy, he was eating 3 avocados a day, 3 cans of sardines a day, salmon, like lots of good oils, lots of good nuts. And even though he gained 6 pounds, his waist size didn't improve. Or did not that it didn't improve, it didn't enlarge. So he maintained a good, healthy body composition. So he didn't gain 6 pounds of body fat. He gained 6 pounds of strength, through properly feeding his body what it needed to grow and develop. So, and that's quite aggressive fasting. Usually someone who comes into the clinic that's less than 10% body fat, like this gentleman, we wouldn't bring up 5 days of fasting. But for someone who is that lean, doing one 24-hour fast a week, doing 16/8 on a regular basis, and just making sure you're taking full advantage of those eating windows and eating a ketogenic diet, you should be able to maintain your weight and actually put on good mass rather than fat mass by doing a ketogenic diet in the time-restricted eating periods.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah. So for all the people who were thinking fasting is not for them because of they're happy with their fat ratio, it's really just controlling the eating window. Another question, like now we are, I'm super happy that we covered kind of the basics of intermittent fasting with my previous guests, and with you, a true expert, I can really dive deep into the questions the audience brought to us. And one of it is that people say to us that, I already skipped breakfast. There are people who just naturally don't eat breakfast, and once we preach the 16-18 hours method, it's basically say it's the same as skipping breakfast, right? But how strict is the eating window, right? So yeah, that's the question.
I think this is super important. Being in nephrology or kidneys, we do have a ton of patients that we work with who are on dialysis. So when you're on dialysis, is life-sustaining therapy. So it cleans out your blood like the kidneys are supposed to. So when the kidneys are too damaged, they can't clean the blood. So if you don't clean the blood, then all these toxins and unwanted things build up and electrolytes get thrown out of whack. So you have to depend on a machine. And it's aggressive. Like, it's not the most pleasant experience. It's quite aggressive. And because their kidneys don't filter stuff properly, that means they don't filter water properly. So these patients have severe fluid restrictions as to what they can consume. So usually it's about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of water a day, or total fluid a day. So that's water, tea, coffee. So we can't really fast these patients longer than 24 hours, but a lot of them are quite diabetic and a lot of them are quite obese. That's why they got into this position in the first place. So I would have them do 3 24-hour fasts a week. And on their eating days, I'd ask them to skip breakfast and do a 16 or an 18-hour fast. But initially, a lot of them would lose weight and they all started to plateau. and I couldn't fast them longer. So this is where we just became super strict with the eating windows. And so I would tell everyone, I was like, you've got to not eat from noon until 8 p.m. Like you just can't do it, or noon until 6, or whatever your eating window is. You can't have just was one giant period. So we really spend a lot of time with these people, teaching them how to eat a full lunch and eat a full dinner. And it's amazing. The first woman, she was literally eating the same stuff. She just divided it into 2 periods instead of over 8 hours, like the exact same food, same fat, same protein, same carbs, same calories. But she lost 7 pounds in a week and a half after being stalled for like 3 months just by adhering to the eating windows. And anytime now we have a patient who plateaus, and they can't fast more, or they don't want to fast more to plateau, then we go back to our roots and we really focus on the time restricted eating windows. I do it to reset myself after a holiday. My husband's family is American, so I spend a lot of time traveling. And when we visit for extended periods of time. So we end up eating all hours of the day. And the first thing I do when I get home is to go back to my eating windows. And within about 4 or 5 days, I lose any weight that I've gained. Not doing any aggressive fasting. I'm just sticking to those eating windows. And it's amazing. I'll have patients who suffer with horrendous morning blood glucose levels. And we have them, start they're eating everything that they're going to eat for that evening in one 60-minute period, rather than saying, oh, nuts are okay, I can have those at 8 p.m. And oh, a scoop of peanut butter is okay at 9 p.m. Like we see a huge drop in their morning blood glucose levels. So it's not that they can't have those nuts, but have them in their eating window. And it's like absolutely vital. It's the biggest piece of advice I give to my patients. I have a lot of patients too who can't afford to eat low carb or ketogenic, and I have patients in really just poor circumstances here, and they're really sort of dependent on what the government's providing them to eat. So with them, I can still get them off their insulin. I can still get them to lose weight and be healthy just by eating the garbage that they're given in time restricted eating periods, rather than having them snack on it all day long. And so it's amazing the power of when you eat, and how much, like, the power of when you eat, to what we've observed in our clinic, is stronger than what you eat. And of course, what you eat matters for optimal health. Absolutely. Like, I have a patient who is eating fast food all day long. Even if we do it in time restricted eating, I mean, it's not optimal health. But I mean, by just isolating it into 2 windows a day, and by having them do that 16 hours, they can still come off of insulin. They can still lose. I had one woman lose over 80 pounds, even though she was eating fast food twice a day, but just twice a day and just not all day long. Makes a huge difference.
Wow, that's gold, ladies and gentlemen. Shiny yellow gold coming straight out of the Megan lips. That's amazing. That's the question I've been pondering myself on, and because a lot of people, think that, okay, maybe today I'm gonna finish eating at 8 p.m. tomorrow 9 p.m. Oh, the next day I have a dinner, I'm gonna be 10 p.m. So what I'm hearing from you, consistency is key, and actually. At the guideline number 3 of our intermittent fasting challenge is actually stay consistent. Choose your eating window. If you're not skipping breakfast, you might be skipping dinner, but whatever you decide, keep your eating window regular for as long as you can, basically, right? So then you'll feel the benefits at the strongest level. Awesome, that's great. We touched diabetes a little bit, and you are a big expert at age of 27. I think you mentioned that you got diagnosed with diabetes yourself. What are your biggest takeaways? For the people, maybe there are some diabetic people in our audience. Maybe they have the relatives or friends. What are your biggest advice for those people?
Well, I think a lot of people, when they're diagnosed with diabetes, they go into denial because they think it's a death sentence. or it's this chronic condition that's going to give them all kinds of issues. And they go into denial and they don't be proactive about it. And then they end up with all of these issues. Be proactive from it from day one, because there's nothing to be in denial about. Your body is full of excess sugar. You can fast, you can eat low carb or ketogenically, you can eliminate that excess sugar. It's not a chronic progressive disease. It's just a continuum of how much sugar we have in our system. Very little, no diabetes. More sugar, more diabetes. And the more sugar you have, the more diabetic you are. But there are ways to actually treat that. And so many of the patients that I work with that are in their 60s and 70s, they said if they could go back in time to, when they were 55 and diagnosed with diabetes, man, would they have done things a lot differently, but they were just so in denial about it. So there is a lot of hope. And if you're nervous about fasting, you can always try low carb or ketogenic diets. You can always just try to eat proper meals. I think one of the biggest issues in society, especially like with the millennial generation too, is with my generation, we just grew up eating all the time. Like our parents were too busy. We ate what was thrown in front of us when it was thrown in front of us. We're perpetual grazers. And a lot of people, as we've evolved, in the last 50 years, life has become so much more chaotic for everyone. And learn to eat proper meals. So if you're nervous of fasting, just focus on proper meals so you're just not eating all of the time. I tell my patients, I said, when you eat, you should make sure that all of the energy you've consumed in that meal is burned from your body before you eat again. Because if you eat when you still are half full of energy, that half tank of energy that you have in your system is just going to be stored to be used later on. And then that's how you add on the body weight. That's how you add in the sugar to your system and cause disease. So really just try to make sure that your body is ready to eat again. If you haven't been particularly active, you're not really hungry, it's 1:00, it might be lunchtime, but that might not mean that your body needs something from breakfast time. So really think about, is your body ready to accept new food? Do you really need that new food energy? And being mindful of your foods too. I always encourage my patients to go through a little bit of a checklist when they look at a food and say, okay, piece of bread. Are you going to raise my blood sugar levels? Are you going to cause water retention? Are you going to make me feel sick? Am I going to regret eating you later on? Versus Brussels sprouts. So that's never going to happen. So just learning to be mindful, really sitting down and thinking about what you're going to eat and try to learn how to eat proper meals. And just by doing that, alone, you can make such a huge impact on your diabetes. So I know fasting sounds really scary to a lot of people still, but just making those simple changes can really help. And just knowing that it really isn't this chronic progressive disease. I'm proof of it. It's been a very long time now. My numbers are fantastic. It doesn't have to be a death sentence. I have a whole great future ahead of me that isn't riddled with heart disease and foot amputations and dialysis, and that's where I was going before. It doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. Wow, great advice. Thank you for sharing your story. Once again, for those people who can relate, I hope that gave you inspiration and valuable information. We'll just quickly gonna talk also what you specifically do at your clinic. But just a question before, I'm super interested also, if people, fasting, that's why also one of the reasons we chose 16-8 hour fasting is because it's still okay to do it on your own. It's still totally okay. What is the level of fasting where you shouldn't be doing without medical supervision?
Well, it really sort of depends for everyone. Most people on the planet, 16-8 or 18-6 or even a 24-hour fast is very benign. So I would say really anything sort of beyond 16 or 18 hours, just check with your doctor, make sure, you don't have any kidney issues, any heart issues that need monitoring, that people who start to fast beyond 16 or 18 hours, good things happen. Like they might need reduction in blood glucose medication and blood pressure medication. So just making sure that your doctor is aware if you're going to do beyond that. For people who don't have medical concerns, 24 hours tends to be very benign, but it's really important to have some sort of physician supervision. And we're so fortunate we're in 2018 that there's a physician everywhere that's supportive of it. And they might be hard to find, but you can always reach out to us and see who we know in the area. But there's really always sort of one person out there who's in a given state or in a given country or city that is okay with it and will monitor you. So just trying to connect to these like-minded physicians or doctors is important. But 16.8, 18.6 is very, very benign for people even with severe medical complications.
All right, that's good to hear. But still, ladies and gentlemen, by no means you should be doing, intermittent fasting challenge if you are not sure about your medical conditions. Please consult your physician and start it only then. Great, thank you so much. So I've seen that you guys, and you also mentioned already that you have this intensive dietary management coaching program and also a monthly membership. Could you tell us, a little bit more? What is that about? Is that only restricted to people in Toronto and Canada, or more people could benefit?
Well, we got all kinds of wacky things going on. I don't know how Jason and I haven't lost our heads yet. We do have a small Toronto-based clinic, and that's just for local patients. It's for legal reasons. It's not insurance or financial, but just that's what the government says we can do. We can treat local patients, but it's very small. Jason and I use it just to sort of experiment with fasting. But the bulk of our program's online, and we actually have two different online programs. We have our personalized coaching program where you can work with one of our therapeutic educators or therapeutic fasting educators, and they can help guide you through the fasting, particularly if you're someone who's tried it on your own and who has struggled. Most of the people that come into the coaching program, they've tried it, but they don't quite know where they're going wrong. And they need a little bit more guidance, or they're just nervous to navigate something that's so foreign to them by themselves. And they're not quite sure what are things they should be looking out for, because fasting is very individualized, and different medications, different health conditions, different family histories even can have an impact on what would be optimal for you. So we have the personalized coaching program, but we have another program. It's a monthly membership program, and this one's more for people who have either been through a coaching program or who are navigating fasting just fine on their own, but they just want a bit more support and to be part of a community. So we do Q&As all of the time, answering the members' questions to help navigate them. I mean, if they only have a couple of questions, they shouldn't have to join a coaching program. Just have a couple of questions answered. So we will answer them in the membership community. We connect them with the community. We do group fasts together in the community. So it's a place to just sort of come hang out with like-minded people, get their questions answered. We do science updates weekly too. Jason or I will go through and do some science updates and some quick courses too on fasting and holidays and fasting while you're not well, and figuring out how to navigate fasting in your lifestyle.
Gotcha.
So we have those two programs.
And is that especially that's a membership part? Is that all online or?
It's all online, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all online. There is once a week you can interact live with one of our educators, or myself or Jason. We sort of rotate through. Each of us sort of specializes in something a little bit different, and interact live. But it's all online, and then there's a community place where you can go and actually talk to people. We have trained moderators who are just solely moderate for us, that are therapeutic fasting experts that we worked with, that can go in and answer their questions in real time as well. So it's all online, but it's engaging. So in both of our online programs, the coaching program is all online and the membership program is both all online. And in both programs, we have people from all over the world. So I actually had a coaching group before we recorded this podcast today. There was a man from South Korea, a woman from Barcelona, a woman from Seattle, Washington in the United States, and then one from Northern Ontario, right here in Canada. So it's really cool for us because we get to meet with all these people. Some of my coaching educators actually live all over the world. Some on the west coast of North America. One is on her way to move to Portugal. So it's both programs. We use the internet to connect with people all over and to give them fasting help and guidance wherever they are in the world.
That's awesome. The internet connecting people. And, the reason I'm asking is that our audience is definitely all over the world, majority of them being in North America and quite a big part in Europe and some in Asia as well. So definitely that's a big advantage that you guys do it online, actually. So, and I just got an idea that maybe after 21-day intermittent fasting challenge, if people need a further support, that they would like to go deeper, maybe they could just check out your program. And I will definitely put a link in the show notes and at the end of this video, or if you're listening to this on the audio, just simply go to hustleduo.com/Megan. That everything's going to be there. But also we could just say it out loud. So what would be the website address?
Oh, it's idmprogram.com. So idmprogram.com is where you can find out all about the wacky stuff that we're doing.
The wacky. It's funny. It's funny because tomorrow I'm with a couple of my friends. We're gonna do this sports challenge at my gym, and our team name is gonna be the Wacky Kangaroos. So this wacky is gonna stick with me for a couple of days now.
It's an awesome team name.
Yeah. Great. Thanks so much, Megan, for sharing the knowledge. Before saying goodbye, I would love to grill you, and that's of course a very strong word, which simply means I just want to ask you a couple of simple questions at the end.
Sounds great.
Let's do this. All right. So, what's the personal habit that made you a better person?
Personal habit that made me a better person. Oh, geez. I would say, this is a tough one. Self-reflection here. It is grilling. Personal habit, I think just listening. I'm someone who's a little bit impulsive, so I always wanna speak. So I've had to learn to really wait till someone is done speaking before I try to engage, because it's always the last part of what they say that's the most important. So I think listening is important.
It's a very big skill, like you said. When you eat is more important than what you eat. It's the same way listening is more important than talking. I agree with you to 100%. An internet resource that made your life more simple?
Google Calendar. My life is fully dictated by Google Calendar, so much so that I abandoned my Apple phone to get a Google phone, because I don't know what I would do without Google Calendar. My husband was the one for years who said, you need to use Google Calendar. Your life would be more effective. And it just seemed so foreign to me. So giving it a go, now it runs my whole universe. I don't know what would happen if it crashed. That's
good.
my Achilles tendon. Yeah.
Awesome. A newsletter you don't delete?
A newsletter I don't delete. Ours. A newsletter I don't delete. So I tend to get spammed a lot, and I spend so much of my personal time reading about work stuff that I say newsletters I don't delete are stuff that are more personal to me. So in like the fashion and sort of exercise realms. So this is probably really funny, but this is like wholeheartedly true. Is I follow the Skinny Confidential podcast. I like her lifestyle tips. So for me, being able to read that's not work related. There's only so much you can read about ketones and time restricted eating before it doesn't become super fun all of the time. So that's one newsletter I get weekly from that blog that I really enjoy reading. Just changes things up in my day a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, my wife is also a big fan of Skinny Confidential. I also listened to a couple of episodes, so big shout out to the guys. I think they're doing an amazing job. I love their style. They have definitely just unique style, and that's always helpful. Being unique is always a big challenge. And the last simple question: a book that changed your life?
Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes probably saved my life. So that is a sort of more work-related one, but I'm not going to die from diabetes. I'm going to be able to have kids, which is something they told me I couldn't do. And Good Calories, Bad Calories was the first book that I read in this health nutrition field that I knew I could trust. The resource, it was just written so well. There was no rebuttal that could come from the sugar industry after reading that book. He did such a good job. You read so many of these other health books, and it's just like, I will trust me because I'm an expert, and it's like, well, you can have two really renowned doctors write two totally different pieces on sugar, one in support and one against. But Gary Taubes did a really good job analyzing the research or explaining the research. He didn't even analyze, he just explained it. And it changed just him explaining it and, how we got to where we are. He didn't have to be biased in his writing. The research spoke for itself. And I thought it was just beautiful 400 pages of stuff. I mean, it's amazing to be able to present an argument without having to present an argument because the facts spoke for itself. And that book is what really opened my mind to this way of living, and it saved my life. I'm also a happier person. I have more energy to be social with my family and friends. They want to be around me now. So it's affected, like, just changing my life this way through just focusing on food as the medicine and food as, what is supposed to keep me healthy, not necessarily something that I'm just supposed to enjoy. That book was the big game changer for me.
That's great. I heard of it. I haven't read it yet, but I will certainly do so now. It sounds amazing. So I'll put the link in the show notes for everybody who would like to get that as well. And before we say goodbye, how can people find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I'm 33. I've got social media, so everywhere. So Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, you can find me at Megan J. Ramos. Those are my Twitter and Instagram handles. I'm better on Instagram. I post lots of photos of what I eat when I eat, and my dogs when I'm fasting. You can always tell when I'm fasting. Yeah. And then you can find me on Facebook just by searching Megan Ramos. We have a couple Facebook groups too. The one that's available for the public is called the Obesity Code Network, Fasting Support with Megan Ramos and Jason Fung. And I'm pretty active on that Facebook group. So you can just search for that group and find me on there. And I look forward to connecting with you online.
Amazing. I hope people will connect with you and, kind of have that fasting journey together with you. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It was a true pleasure. I enjoyed this a lot. I hope people got a lot of knowledge, stuff that they could use today, tomorrow, and stuff that could change their lives. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thanks for having me, and happy fasting with your fasting challenge, everyone. And I look forward to reading about it online and hearing about how it goes. Keep me posted too on that.
What's up, superheroes? It's me again. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Megan. You can find the show notes of this episode by going to hustleduo.com/Megan. That's Megan with MEGAN. And if you wish to try our 21-day intermittent fasting challenge, if you haven't tried that yet, you can do that by going to hustleduo.com/IF, and there you'll be able to sign up, set the start date, and you're gonna get an amazing challenge guide straight into your inbox. So with all information, and we'll guide you along the way. So 21 days intermittent fasting challenge, definitely something you should check out. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. And don't forget to double your hustle.